Hello, dear. It's Heather, and you're watching Save Today with Heather J. I'm somebody who has spent her entire adult life living paycheck to paycheck and being one life event away from financial crisis. It was time for that to change, beyond time for that to change. And so I needed to create a budget and then stick to it. And the sticking to it is the thing that has been hard for me for my entire adult life. So I created this channel as a way to kind of hopefully make myself stick to it. I knew that in needing to check in with you guys where I was at with my budget, that would then force me to check in with myself and where I was at with this budget. And that's what we're doing today. We're doing a weekly check-in, my week number 2 for October, my flexible spending check-in. And then we're also going to go ahead and close out paycheck number 1 at this time. As you may or may not be able to tell, I'm sure you can tell, I am feeling a bit under the weather. So I just want to acknowledge that because you're going to hear me breathing a little bit more, and you're going to hear that nasally in my voice, and I can't just pretend that that's not happening. But also, I don't want to wait to film this video until that all goes away, because at that point I will be significantly further behind in the posting with you guys. Now, I've already done my check-in with myself, so of course I can move on myself. But this channel has become a very important part of my success. And if I give myself an excuse to not check in with you guys or not check in yet, I feel like that is setting myself up for future failures. So we're not going to do that today. So again, today we're going to do my October flexible spending for week number 2. We're going to see what happened with that. And then we're just going to close out paycheck number 1, because that's where we're at in my life. And there's not very many transactions in week number 2. And I have been finding that that is consistently the case. And that may be the way we just move forward. It makes sense. I get paid in 1 week. I spend the majority of the money I have to spend. By the time that second week comes around, there's not much left in the checking accounts. And so I, of course, I don't spend it because it's not there to spend. And that has been what has been the routine my entire life. You know, I get the money, it's all gone instantly, and then I have to wait until I get the next batch of money, and then it's all gone instantly. So we'll see if this changes things as we round out a year in this and see if we get things more consistent. But for right now, it's fine. It is what it is, and we're going to move on. So let's get into this today. My first transaction, so week number 2 for me is the 29th of September to the 5th of October. So that's the time frame we're looking at. So on the 2nd of October, in the miscellaneous category, I went to Kohl's and I spent $11.30. I finally went and got myself a pair of jeans. I have not been clothing shopping in a number of years. People tend to give me their hand-me-downs. I almost said leftovers. People tend to give me their hand-me-downs because they know I do not like to shop, and they know I'm a happy recipient of that. And so the pants that I had at this point in time have all been given to me by somebody else. So that happened probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I only know the time frame because of where I was living at that time, because I move a lot. I know who gave them to me. I know where I was working when I got those, and I know what state I was living in, and that was 3 or 4 years ago. So it's been even longer than that since I've gone to go and purchase some pants for myself. I cannot stress enough that I do not like to shop. It's part of why I do not like to cook. It's the whole shopping aspect of that. But trying on clothes is very, very depressing. So I put it off as long as possible. And I finally could not put it off any longer. I really need to get 3 or 4 more pairs. I just got one. And I went scrolling all of the aisles and shelves. And I was in the store and I was like, oh my gosh, they don't have anything big enough for me. Where am I going to go if they don't have anything big enough for me? And I went and pulled all of the biggest pants I could find. And turns out, thankfully, I'm still big, but I'm not quite as big as I thought. I actually had picked up things that were far too big for me and had to go back for a second round for a slightly smaller size. So that's nice. I did end up with a pair of pants that were on the clearance rack, and initially I didn't really want them because they're like a pull-up elastic style and they don't have a zipper and the button in the front, and I didn't think I'd like that. But they were the right size, they were the right price, they fit, and I by that time was ready to get the heck out of there. And they were priced at $13.80 or something like that. That's great. I'm going to pay $15 for a pair of pants. I'm absolutely okay with that. Let's go. But then I got to the register and they were even less. They were having a sale on their sale. So that's great. I spent $11.30. I bought myself one pair of pants. I'm so grateful to have things that fit me and don't have holes in the thighs. It's wonderful. Obviously, I've got to go do that again, but that's what that $11.30 is. Also on the 2nd, I went to Kroger's, and in the groceries category, I went to Kroger's and I spent $22.10. And then on the 3rd, in the groceries category, I went to Walmart and spent $24.45. Again, I don't really know exactly what these transactions were. I do know at Walmart, I was looking for a quick fix, something to fix as soon as I got home that was going to be easy. Again, I'm trying really hard to avoid dining out at this stage. And it was really exciting when I was pushing week 4, week 5, week 6. Now I'm pushing week 7 and week 8. And I'm beginning to feel like a pouty child about it. I'm starting to like put out my bottom lip, cross my arms, and stomp my feet. Like I'm just like, I want food, you know, being a little temper tantrum child. And so I was battling that on this day. And ultimately I went to Walmart and I bought, they have some frozen pre-chopped meat for Philly cheesesteaks. And so I got that, and I got some bell peppers and an onion and some buns and some Swiss cheese. And I went and I got the groceries to make that dinner that would be quick to make and, you know, not like a meal that was closer to dining out than anything else would have been. And it was delicious, but that's what that was about. And that is the end of all of my flexible spending shopping in week 2. So there's not much to say. So we will then go and see what these few transactions did to my estimate, my budget estimate over here. Again, I don't think I said it, but for me, flexible spending is groceries, dining out, transportation, art, and miscellaneous. Those are the categories that I have the greatest control over, and those are the categories I get myself in the most damage in if I'm not paying attention. And so that's why we're tracking that on a weekly basis. So if I am a little bit out of control, I can reel it in, you know, weekly instead of at the end of the month when there's no money left. So in my groceries category, those 2 transactions were $46.55. I've given myself an $500 for the month in my flexible spending. So last week I finished out, I had $275.02. I spent $46.55. So I have $228.47 in that budget to get me through the next 2 weeks. Let me double check that this is still recording. It is good. Then in the dining out, I did make it, you guys, 1 more week with 0 dining out. This puts me now at 8 solid weeks of 0 dining out. And even though I'm acting like a petulant child, I'm still so thrilled that I've gone 8 weeks. I'm going to have to fit that into my budget. It's beginning to stop being exciting and start being... well, I don't know exactly the right words I'm looking for, but it's beginning to irritate me that I'm so focused on not dining out that I'm not allowing myself that. On the one hand, I know if I give in and go to McDonald's, I'm going to be thoroughly disappointed in the quality of the food I just paid far too much money for. So I want to plan to go to some place that's a quality restaurant and treat myself and give myself that one splurge. So I have to find a way to fit that in there, because at this point in time, while I'm so thrilled I've gone 8 weeks, it's consuming too much of my mental space, and I'm really having to fight with myself, and it's no longer thrilling. So I'm still going to continue to push. At this point, I've already set the budget for this month. I don't have funds in the budget for a splurge, but I'm going to have to make that happen in November. I have to. For my mental space, I have to. So I'm hoping I don't do any just quick fast food that's going to be disappointing. But I might, because I'm beginning to, it's not fun anymore, you guys. All right, in the transportation, I have $0. I had spent $50.95 last week. I filled up both vehicles, and both vehicles were around $25. So I have $49.05 to get me through the next 2 weeks. In my art, I did not spend anything. This $0 in my art category has been significantly longer. I say significantly, maybe 3 weeks longer than my dining out, or at least equally as long. And that's less of a celebration for me. I've definitely gone long periods where I haven't done anything related to my art. That's less of a mental challenge for me than that dining out category is, but that's also still at 0, so that's great. And then in the miscellaneous category this week, I spent that $11.30 on that pair of pants. That's a fabulous price for a pair of pants. No matter what, that's a great price. There could have been an extra one in front of that. Some people definitely spend $150 on a single pair of pants at, like, I don't know, Macy's or whatever. I don't even know the names of the stores because I don't go. So that did leave me with $131.23 left in what I had given myself for my miscellaneous budget for the month. Now, initially, when I wrote this budget, I had some shelving units for the pantry and the kitchen I wanted to purchase, and I did purchase one of them in week 1. So this was for shelving and for pants, and that is what I've done so far, shelving and pants. So far, life hasn't thrown a monkey wrench in at me, so we're doing well. Ugh. Do you see this? I didn't do my totals. That's obnoxious. I will have to do those off camera because the calculator I use is the phone that has the camera in it. That was dumb. Okay, moving on. So what is this? 85, 50, 57, 85. Yeah, I can't do that math to take away what I have left. $412 maybe? I don't know. Oh, that's supposed to be covered. You can't see that. So now we're going to close out paycheck number 1. For my wage estimate, I had given myself, so I am a hourly employee, not salaried employee. I get paid $20.85 an hour. I work full time, which for my company is 32 to 40 hours. I've been really pushing that 40-hour mark, so I estimate 38 hours. And then the amount of weeks in this pay period. So obviously paycheck number 1 is just 2 weeks. And then I take out 25% for taxes and medical. So that leaves me with an estimate of $1,188.45. This week I actually received $1,252.52. Both of those weeks I did work the full 40 and had a teeny tiny bit of overtime. I had 0.02 on one week in overtime, and I think 0.13. I got 63 cents in overtime on one week and $4 and something in overtime in the next week. So just a teeny tiny bit. But that did mean that my check was $64.07 more than I had estimated it would be, and that's fantastic. And then in the other category, I don't have any consistent other income that I can estimate that I would be receiving. I don't have a second job. I don't get child support. I don't have any kind of investments that do some sort of regularly payouts. I know those things exist. I don't know what they are and how that would happen. So my other line was estimated to be 0. Now I did receive $68.78. Again, I had loaned my son some money and I had filled up his gas tank. I had let him know that anything I spent out would be impacting groceries and bills. And so when he got paid, he did give me $70 back. My bank takes a fee. So what I had was $68.78, which is $68.78 more than I estimated was coming in. So my totals, again, estimate $1,188.45. Received $1,321.30, which was over my estimate by $132.85. Then the next thing I go over is my fixed expenses. These are my bills, the things I'm required to pay whether I like it or not. If I don't pay, I get late fees, I get fines. I don't get to set these rates. Just have to pay it. And this month, or this paycheck, the only thing I had on here was my rent for $853. That is what came out. There was no surprises there. That is what it was. And then I have this other line. Again, I estimate that at zero. There isn't, that's there so that when something happens, like loaning my son some money, I have a place to put that. Also, so that when something happens, like a bill shows up unexpectedly that I feel like paying, I can do that right away. And then I don't have to wait to get that into next month's, to document that for you guys. And so this did have an estimate of zero. Again, there was that $50 cash I gave him. So that was $50 more than I thought it was going to go out. And so instead of $853, I did spend $903, again, $50 more. The next thing we go over is my flexible spending. Again, I just said that's my groceries, dining out, transportation, art, and miscellaneous. So let's see what that looked like for this 2 weeks, because the last page we looked at was for the month as a whole. We're going to look at just what this paycheck part of that was. So for this paycheck in my groceries, I had estimated I would spend $250. So that's $125 per week. I did end up spending $271.53, which put me over budget by $21.53. You may or may not recall, but last month I had finally given myself $140 a week, and that felt right to me last month. I did dial that back a little bit this month because of what I knew I wanted to do with my flexible spending. And we can see here that really I did need to have that little bit of extra. Because, if I had given myself that 140, I would not be in the red in here. Dining out, hallelujah, a solid paycheck with no dining out. I'm still thrilled to have it. It's just getting harder to be happy about that in my own head. Transportation, I had estimated I would be spending $50 per paycheck. And I spent $50.95. So that's just 95 cents over budget. In my art, I gave myself nothing in the estimate and I did not spend anything, so that's great. I've picked my art projects right now because I have a million things that are in the works that need to be finished. And I'm picking things that I feel very confident I have everything I'm going to need for that. That being said, we'll have a conversation about what I don't have on this project. And then in my miscellaneous, for this page period, I had actually given myself $0. All of the miscellaneous I had given myself was in my next paycheck. But I went ahead and spent $85.13 on this check anyway, knowing I was going to be impacting myself. But I didn't want to wait a full month to be able to get those shelves once I knew what I wanted to do. I got my stuff shipped to me in mid to late July. I think it was the third week of July that I received that. And here it is late September, early October, and I still have things in boxes because there's no place to put them in here. And so I really needed to get the shelving in the pantry so I can get the rest of the kitchen boxes unpacked. There's no place to put all of the stuff until I get them unpacked. And so I wanted to hurry up and get that started. And then of course, I don't know how I got away as long as I did with having holes in that many of my pairs of pants. So I did spend a little bit. I spent $85.13, which of course was all overspending because this time I didn't give myself any. So for the flexible spending budget, I had estimated I would be spending $300. I did actually spend $407.61, which was $107.61 more than I thought that was going to be. And that's fine. It is what it is. So let's look at the ending balance and see what this does for, what did I do to myself by doing this extra spending. My income, again, the estimate $1,188.45, actual $1,321.30, which was $132.85 more than I thought it was going to be. Hallelujah, we like more money. In all of its forms, we like more money, so that's great. My fixed expenses were estimated to be $853. I spent $903. That was unfortunately $50 more than I had estimated I was going to spend. Again, that came back to me in the fixed expenses. My flexible, I had estimated $300. I spent $407.61, which was over budget by $107.61. We just said all of that. So why does that matter to say it again? Because of this last line. My totals, I had estimated I would be left with $35.45. I was actually left with just $10.69, which is $24.76 less than I thought I was going to have when I initially set up this budget. And that's awesome as far as I'm concerned. I still have a little bit of money left to carry me into the next pay period, even with all of this extra spending I did. So that's great. This one so the extra in my fixed expenses and part of what I spent in my gas is what came back to me. So that's what that is. And that is where we're at when we finish closing out paycheck number 1. It's good I do these check-ins because it would have been very easy for me to have not paid attention. I gave into the urge to get started early on the shelving units. But if I hadn't been watching, it's likely I would have purchased all of the shelving units all at one time and then not been able to pay the rent. Or maybe I'd have paid the rent and I wouldn't have paid some of these other things. But I would have likely done that. I would have damaged myself. So knowing this helps. Then we're going to talk about my project here in the background. Now, last time I talked to you guys, I said I wasn't happy with how noticeable these words were on the welcome here. Let me see if that's showing up well. I don't even know if that's still showing up well on camera, but in real life, this shows up much better than it had done, and I was really happy with that. So then I spray basted. I use an adhesive basting. So for those of you who don't know but are still listening, in quilting, you have 3 layers. You have the top layer that you stitch, that's your pretty layer. You have the batting, which is which is the second layer, that's your cushion, and then you have the backing, and that just keeps the threads all together. You have several ways to hold those together. They need to be held together or they're going to slide and shift and you're going to end up with wrinkles and things not being covered. You can use safety pins. You can use a, I don't know what it's called. I call it the pokey gun at work, but where you put the needle through the fabric and you pull the trigger and it shoots a piece of plastic through there to hold, like in retail, it holds a tag. They have little ones where the tags are like this big that hold your quilts together. Or you can use a spray adhesive. And I prefer the spray adhesive, except that I have to go lay this out outside and spray it. But then I don't have to have any plastic pieces or safety pins kind of getting in my way as I'm doing my work. I like the spray adhesive. And so maybe you can see these are all, they're stuck together. There is, they're stuck. So that's what I do. I use the spray adhesive and I got these all sprayed, and then you iron it so that the glue kind of really melds with the 2 pieces of fabric and stops being tacky so that your needle doesn't get sticky. Then you take a swatch of fabric that's got a front and a back and batting inside. And I needed to practice some of the stitches. This machine I was gifted most recently has a lot of fun stitches, and I realized that it has what's called a stippling stitch, which is this one here. And so I played with that to see if I liked it, and I played with a few of their other things, and I adjusted some stuff, and I decided I knew what I wanted to put where. And so I started stitching the stippling stitch in these brown areas, and then almost immediately didn't really like it because it doesn't have that poofy, soft, squishy that we're used to quilts having. It was very stiff and pressed flat. And I think more than the stitch, that has to do with this, the interfacing that's on the fabric that made this so stiff. That's the reason my friend didn't want to finish putting this together. But that's fine. It's just a wall hanging. It's just, you know, it's for the grandkids. I'll just finish it and I'll get it done. And I did that stippling in all of these brown areas. And then I was considering what I was going to do on the white and the snowman. And then as I was walking into work, the next day after I had finished all of this, I realized, oh no, this is not my project. I don't have any more of this fabric in my stash. I never had fabric of this in my stash, and she didn't give me her scraps. Of course not. So I don't have a way to do the binding on here that's not going to be obnoxious and noticeable. And so I was like, well, that's fine. I'll just do a facing. A facing is where you you do all the quilting here, and then you sew the back onto the front sides together, and you flip it inside out so that the edges of this just fold over on themselves to connect to the edges of the back. Well, that's fine. That's easy to do. Except I already have the back glued on to the backing and stitched. So I can't do that. What I could do is continue with the stitch work I'm doing and just put an additional backing on it. Or I could take all of the stitching out that I've done already and do the back the right way. But I have this glue on there. If I take this back off, then this will be sticky everywhere on my machine as I'm trying to glue that. Well, then I'll just put muslin on it, and I'll have muslin. Muslin is just a cheap white cotton fabric, very similar to this. I use it in my apparel sewing, and I have tons of it, and so I can just cut a piece of that and have that be on the back. But that still means I have to undo all of the stitching I put in. But if you know me, I don't like shortcuts. I don't like to do things the easy way. I like to do things the right way. So I'm undoing all of those stitches as carefully as I can, and they don't show up very well in the brown. I don't know if they're going to show up very well here in the dark blue, but if you can see all of that, each one of these little arounds here, you know, that little teeny tiny, that's like 10 stitches in that little teeny tiny, like 1/4 inch spot. As you can see here, this thread is miles long, and this has just come out of this little piece right here. This little piece here is this one thread miles long. So I will be undoing that. But I had also realized, because I didn't like how stiff this was when I stitched it as fully as I was doing it, I decided I wanted to kind of do a wavy line in white, similar to what I did on that heart, to kind of mimic the wind blowing, the snow blowing the wind on this wintry snowman scene. And then I do have some snowflake beads and buttons and things that I'm going to attach to that. So I'm very excited about taking this in a different direction, but that means I have to undo the work I started. So this is going to take me a little bit longer than I had initially planned, but once I get past this point, it's going to then fly together again. I also didn't really like how sloppy this was looking on the back with this, so there's a lot of reasons why I'm taking it apart. But that is where we're at with this project, and I'm going to use this project as a metaphor for life and for budget, where in this project I had done all the right things. That's what you do when you're making a quilt. And for this instance, it was not the right thing. There was another thing that is also the right thing, that is just not a familiar thing to me, not something I've done a lot. And so I have to back up and start over and try this other way. And I think that works for us on our budgeting and for all other aspects of life. There's so many right ways. There's so many different ways to get from where we are to where we're trying to be. And sometimes we will do the familiar automatically, the way I did, and get halfway through and realize that's not going to work this time. I have to try something different. And so then we'll have to go back and find another right way to get through the project we're going to do. So I'm going to leave you with that thought today. I want to thank you for hanging out with me wherever you are today, and whatever you're doing, please have fun. Bye-bye now.